Welcome to Invested Souls, the podcast where real estate expertise meets relationship growth.
And we're your hosts, the Flanagans. I'm Brad.
And I'm Jamie. This podcast is your chance to learn from our experiences and follow in our footsteps. Whether you're an entrepreneur, investor, or real estate professional, we've got the insights and strategies to help you elevate your wealth and achieve financial freedom.
But it's not just all about real estate. We believe that thriving in life means nurturing the relationships that matter most.
That's right. We'll be talking about how to balance your personal and professional life so you can create a fulfilling and prosperous future.
So join us on Invested Souls and let's grow together in wealth, relationships, and success.
Ready to elevate your life? Let's get started. Welcome to Invested Souls. Welcome back, everybody. We are on Invested Souls. Today I have Melissa McCurley, and she's actually in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. So she's a fellow eXp real estate agent, and I'm excited to have the conversation with you because she has battled some health situations in the past and overcome them. And I was actually just at a conference recently, and we were talking about, like, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So we'll go ahead. If you want to introduce yourself and kind of, you mentioned flips, let us know, the audience know kind of your background.
Sure. Thanks, Jamie. Hi, my name's Melissa McCurley. I've been in real estate since 2003. I was an interior designer turned house flipper, and I flipped over 75 houses in my career. I also owned and managed a rental portfolio for many years. I'm a realtor with eXp as well. And in 2020, I was really laid out from a chronic illness, from autoimmune disease. And so I couldn't work for a few years. I actually moved back home to Texas. I was living in New Mexico, sold my home in the mountains. It was a total life recalibration. And then 2024 was my first year back full-time working in real estate. I joined eXp, best brokerage in the world. And so my mission now is sharing the conversation about having a professional career as somebody who's living with a chronic illness. Because, it's not every something we ever get over. You have to learn to integrate it, right? And we have highs and lows and flare-ups, and it's really about management. And I've learned a lot in my journey, and I've had conversations, and I highlight people on my podcast who have learned a lot on their journeys. And I'm just, wanting to open that conversation and share it out and kind of create community around it because we all do better together,
Absolutely. So so you said you were bedridden, couldn't work, do you have kids, family?
Yeah, right. I was in so much physical pain. So I just woke up one morning with joint pain that was indescribable. The closest thing to describe it is maybe if you can imagine electricity, like an electrical current running through your entire body of hot pain. It's sort of close to it. I had vertigo. So I also had dizziness and nausea. So I had a very hard time sitting up. I couldn't even listen to an audiobook. It was physically painful. These are hard things to quantify for somebody who's never experienced them, but it was just a total disability. I also had a lot of cognitive issues and brain fog. So working wasn't possible. A lot of sensory stuff, kind of migraine where I couldn't look at it literally physically hurt to look at my phone, light and sound. I couldn't read. Yeah, it was terrible.
It's real estate tough when you can't look at your phone.
Right. And in hindsight, in 2020, we actually moved back to Texas. And I hadn't worked for a couple of years. So we moved back in March of 2020, and I was really afflicted in September of 2020. But in hindsight, this was coming. I had started kind of doing some different tests. I did a hair test. I did some diagnostic gut things because I knew something wasn't right with my energy level, trying to figure it out. But I'm very stubborn. And so, I didn't really slow down until I was just taken at the knees. Yeah. So it became this great unraveling because I had a lot of different symptoms. And like anybody who struggles with autoimmune disease or many other chronic illnesses, it's not just it's not like cancer where you get a test and you get a result back, right? It's very hard to figure out what's going on. You could have a Hashimoto's thyroidism, which I have, but it shows up as psoriasis. Does that make sense? And then I also from that just developed psoriatic arthritis, which is hence the joint pain, which is the type of joint pain that comes out of psoriasis, and then vertigo, and then different things. So it's kind of a mess figuring it out. That's why it took a long time to get sort of back into the world.
Yeah, totally. So did you work with what kind of doctors did you work with?
Yeah, I worked with a lot of doctors. And again, this is a very common theme with people who have this kind of chronic illness. So I was lucky enough to be able to work with, of course, this was COVID, right? So I got this when everything was shut down, and I moved back to the country so I could live for free, honestly, to go through this experience. Sold my home. I moved into a family property that was our weekend place in Sanger, Texas, so an hour north of Dallas. So I didn't have access to a lot of things. But I worked remotely with an integrative doctor, friend of my dad's, who was actually one of the chief doctors on staff at Canyon Ranch in Tucson, Arizona. Dr. Parm Deidre, amazing man. He has a TED Talk, and he too has an autoimmune disease. So my first pass was with him, and he diagnosed and treated me with SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, which was the source of a lot of GI problems, which I didn't even mention because those were so secondary to like the pain stuff I was in, but they were terrible.
Yeah.
So we treated that, and we just started like kind of hacking at the root, right? Like, cause there's so much. So we did the SIBO. He connected me with an integrative nutritionist. So I was able to go on a very minimal elimination diet eating protocol, which got all my symptoms down to a manageable level. Cause we just eliminated everything that people could ever react to. So I basically was eating meat, greens, like meat and vegetables pretty much.
Yeah. Wow.
Like some root vegetables, some cassava. It was for like 2.5 years. So I started with them. And then I also saw my regular doctor when I could with COVID, for some, I already had a thyroid, like took thyroid medicine, but I didn't know it was Hashimoto's. There were some other layers in that needed to get kind of tapped in. So, and then in all of it too, like I was going through menopause. So I went to my OBGYN. So it was working with a lot of different doctors. I even saw an acupuncturist for pain management, a lot of these different doctors. I'm very much like all the paths are good. I'm not like a Western medicine only or integrative only.
Yeah.
I got help from all the different voices in the conversation. And I think that's really important to be open to multiple things because, a lot of different healers from their different protocols help me.
Yeah, I agree. It is interesting. What I think a big thing to point out is, as we navigate and like you're in the moms groups and the women's groups and, people are like, I went to the doctor, they told me nothing's wrong. They told me nothing's wrong, but we know our bodies. Like we know when something isn't right, and to push that a little further. And like you said, get multiple opinions and understand like, hey, I know I'm not supposed to feel this way. So like, I want more, I want to figure this out. And cause I was kind of in that spot too. Like, I'm like, maybe this is just normal now. Like maybe just feeling like crap is normal now. And I'm so glad that I personally didn't accept that as like the result, because I don't know. I was like at the point I didn't want to work. I'm like, if this is like, there's no point in working when you feel like this. It's just like,
right. There's no quality of life. Yeah.
Yeah. It's terrible. Mine is nothing like yours. It was more just like my gut health, honestly, was like a big part of mine. It's like,
that's the foundation of all of it. Mine was off too.
Yep. And it's amazing what just like understanding how much that contributes in our food and how terrible our food is now is such a big piece of like our health. So what would you recommend if somebody wasn't feeling right as like the first step toward kind of figuring things out, or what, if you could go back and do it differently, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, for sure. That's a tough one. One of the things that's been a source of my frustration is I was really healthy. I practiced like hot yoga 90 minutes a day, 3 or 4 days a week. I hiked like 6 miles 3 or 4 times a week. I've always eaten super healthy and organics. It wasn't like a lot of people, who develop autoimmune or any kind of illness, there's a lot of cleanup to do around their diet and stuff. And that just wasn't true for me. So I was honestly a little whiny about that. And then I was like, well, the victim mentality is not a productive state. We have to go through it sometimes, but in these situations, it was why I was saying that if there is cleanup to do around your diet, then start there, right? Obviously, because you might just be feeling poorly with how you eat. And if you eat poorly, you're really stacking the deck not in your favor, right? And then if that stuff's on point, and like you said, I had way more tests that came back normal than I had tests that didn't. The only thing that ever showed up for me on a blood test was the SIBO showed up in this breath test you do. My thyroid numbers were a little bit off, but I'm even kind of like considered marginal, although I had all of the intense symptoms of somebody whose numbers you would think were much worse. And even with my psoriatic arthritis, borderline, but you can look at my hands and you can look at different things and you can see in my body, like you said, we know our bodies, you can see in my body symptoms. And then when you look at the blood test, it's kind of, not sure. So, it's always good to start with a basic blood panel with your doctor, but, resources I found helpful. Dr. Mark Hyman, he's on board at the Cleveland Clinic. He started some integrative health clinic. All of his stuff online and his books and things are a great place to go because he is super deep with the integrative functional medicine and Hashimoto's thyroidism in particular. So I started educating myself. So that'd be the thing I would say is you've got to take ownership of your education journey and see all of your doctors, whether they're holistic or Western practitioners as partners in that, and be sure to be positive with everybody. Some people can get kind of snarky with different doctors, and I don't think that's productive. We're all trying to get to the same
No.
place, right?
Right.
It's like, and some people might get you there, but just start getting in conversation, start researching. If you can find kind of the root thing, great. But a lot of people, it takes a couple years and it takes a lot of testing. So just kind of gear up for that.
Yes.
And also
Staying positive. That's huge.
stay positive and keep all of your documentation. So I have kept all my blood tests and all of my stuff along the way so that I have sort of the map of my journey, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Oh, totally. Yeah. That's not even something I would have request or ask for. Because it's like you go to the doctor, they do their thing, you trust that they tell you what's on the results. But yeah, keeping a copy is important. And I need to start doing that. That's something I need to do. I have a 15-year-old and we've talked about that too. It's just like tracking. It's interesting. So we went to the doctor with my 15-year-old and I mentioned that I give her lots of vitamin D. And that was a recommendation from my women's health, the practitioner that I work with, the women's health coach. And the doctor was like, oh, that's, you can actually get toxic levels of vitamin D based on that. And so I said, test her. Well, I was giving her, I can't remember the amount. It was what was recommended. So whatever that was at the time, they tested her. She was perfect. Her levels were perfect. And I'm like, if we hadn't tested her, they told us like, stop doing that. But she was actually right on. And we live in Nebraska and we don't have a lot of sun. And especially in the winter, I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing what I was recommended and it's working. And then she was having issues once when I stopped giving her vitamins. Like it was just, you naturally fall out of habits and we kind of fell off. And my gosh, now her mental health and stuff is struggling. And I was reflecting and realizing we weren't taking our vitamins like we were supposed to. And that it actually has a diet and vitamins make a massive impact on our bodies. Because if our bodies don't have what they need.
Yeah, for sure. I take 10,000 IUDs of vitamin D every other day. And I too had a doctor tell me, oh, well, that's high. You shouldn't be taking that high. And we tested and I was fine. And I need that much because I have a problem. I'm not starting. And like what you said, I think a lot of times doctors, particularly when they're not specialists, will kind of think in the parameters of the average. And, that's not necessarily going to net you the best results for your own health,
Yeah. And something my health practitioner mentioned too is she's like, they go to school for 8 years, but they have one class. I believe it's one class in nutrition.
Nutrition. Yeah.
That's pretty. I mean, you have all this college around everything. And then the most important thing you only have one class about. It's a little bit backwards, to be completely honest. Like it's super backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love
Okay. So do you, with your business, so you said like kind of like planning and management around your business. And I find this really the case. Like this is something that was super cool when I started working with her, even is like learning when to be creative and when to like how to manage the things that we need to do in our lives so that we're actually doing them at the time that we should be, like even our sleep schedule. So like I schedule podcast interviews based on that now too, everything. Tell me a little bit about, because you've flipped houses, you said you had a rental portfolio. And so tell me a little bit about that and like what made you change, or do you still do flips? Kind of what did your business look like then and what does it look like now?
Yeah, you're right for sure. Like whenever you get a chronic illness, and honestly, it'd be nice if we all did this more proactively, like before we have to reset ourselves, but you have to become a master, a Jedi of understanding yourself and your patterns. I mean, that's the only way I've been able to go back to work, to be honest. We finished our last flip January of 2024, and I'm done with that. It was one where we had everything go wrong that could have. And so we had to go in and fill in a lot of gaps. It was a lot of stress. And that happens, every now and then, but it really made me realize like, I can't have that kind of stress in my life right now, in the foreseeable future, because it put me too much in flare-ups. I wasn't in control of, and in real estate, you have some stresses, but it was just a lot of stress that other people brought by lack of professionalism. And I was just like, this is not a good fit. I've also done it a lot. So I'm kind of ready to hang my hat up on that, I think. So for me, actually, I was like flipping, done. Like I'm going to go into doing, what I think of as retail residential real estate. Cause I can manage my time. I can manage my schedule, and I'd rather deal with a difficult client who has a quirky personality than a subcontractor who wants to act like a seventh grader. It just was like, for my personality, that's
funny.
better.
I think I go back and forth. I'm like, all right, I'm over it. I can't do it. I'm struggling with my clients. And so then I go to flips and then I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm over it.
No, I get it. And and this may change. I mean, again, like I said, it's 2024 is my first year back full time, but right now I've created a business where it's mostly listings. So I'm listing heavy because as we all know, it's 3 times the amount of work when you work with a buyer, than a seller. So I built my business
Yep.
around listings, and then I work with basically a buyer a quarter. I do like working with buyers. I just lost my thing. And I like staying in that conversation. Working with the occasional buyer helps me be a better selling agent. And buyers
Totally.
shift their mentality and what they look for. It does change as the market changes. So I just finished with a buyer. They were a lot of work. I'm like, okay, I need a breather. I've got another one coming online in about 2 weeks, and that's it. And then I refer people out. So I've referred buyers. So I get a little piece of that, the power of the referral is so important. But I have the amount of, I'm doing about 20 transactions a year. It's my husband and I, he's my TC and he's my admin. And I'm also growing the podcast. And so that's the number that works for me. It's like that hits my financial, buttons, and I'm not getting burned out. So so I've just built a business. Yeah, I do my really laboriously heavy stuff, like thinking stuff in the morning. I try to be done by that by about 1, and then 1 and later is for podcasting, home touring, stuff like that. So like you said, just kind of managing my energy patterns. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you. Oh, so what's it like working with your husband? How is that? Do you guys do well with that? Obviously you do, because
yeah, we've worked together for 10 years. So when I was in Albuquerque before, we were realtors in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and we both had our license and we worked together. It took us a while. I'll be honest. It took us a while to figure out how to do it because we have really different personalities. He's an introvert to the point of some people are even like, he's not friendly because he's such a numbers person. He is friendly. He's not outgoing. And some people who are super outgoing think that that's not friendly. It's not. But he's not forthcoming with stuff. Whereas if I think something or feel it, I say it, and that's not always helpful either. And so we've really learned each other and what's constructive and what's not, and how we can each bring the best of us to the table and when we need to back off. And so it's lovely. It works well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I worked with my husband's a lender, so we worked together in the business my entire career. But it's funny because there's definitely like a learning, like exactly what you said. He's totally opposite of me. He's numbers. He's very outgoing, but he's numbers. I'm actually probably more introverted, but I am social. I don't know. It's weird. I'm like a social introvert. If I could, like, I need a lot of downtime. If I do a lot of socializing, I need lots of downtime to go with it. He doesn't need a lot of downtime away from people. And so that's where it's like such a balance, because I think when I can get worn down by, if I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't have another phone conversation, he can pick up and like take over the conversation or, step in, which is really nice. But it's like figuring out what your strengths are individually and then leaning into those. Totally. How long have you guys been married?
Since 2014.
Hey, wow. So you guys met after you got licensed. So you're already an agent.
Oh yeah. He was actually had been an agent in Pennsylvania, and I had been an agent in Texas. And then there's been a couple times in it where I let my license expire because I was doing more on the investing side. And then I would pop back in. But I think when we met, neither of us, we were both expired. And then, and I had been actually really heavy in the acting. So I'd done several films. We met in New Orleans and I was there auditioning for a film. And then when we got together, we quickly went back to New Mexico and got re-upped and licensed so I did the film acting and we ran our brokerage. We didn't run a brokerage, but we ran our team.
Do a video for your business?
Do I do what?
Do a lot of video for your business?
I should do more because I have the experience and the camera. I do it kind of in spurts, but we're actually working on doing a series of videos. And that's part of why I got into podcasting because that's I've been a member of the Screen Actors Guild for 12 years, 13 years, and I've been in the industry for 20. So nice. Yeah.
There's an
I don't like to edit them. That's actually why I don't do more.
What?
I actually don't like to edit the stuff. That's why I don't do more. I know. So I'm working on doing more like Instagram, learning the Instagram app stuff.
Yeah, totally. It's true. Like I used to use a guy off of Fiverr for my editing, which was great. It was like $25 a video and awesome.
Nice.
I met him through a coach that I had, and now I have a full-time. Well, I get like 8 videos a month with my videographer, but he edits and he posts them on Facebook. I'm like, this is freaking awesome. So
that's what I need, is somebody to do that part of it.
Yes, you need to find some. It's been great. Like my husband actually found him on Instagram. He's like, I'm helping like X amount of realtors for free. So I did it. I like reached out to him. He did 2 weeks of video for free. And I was like, this is freaking badass. So he's helped me ever since. And I was like, you young guy freaking rocked it building his business. I was like, you're a smart kid. So
Yeah, and
it
he's
worked.
probably so good at editing. I'm like old person
He's
editing on
great.
iMovie, it takes me forever.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not hard. But it's time consuming. Like cut here, do this, do it.
You're like, I need
Transition.
to
There's
be
a lot.
making my
It is
lead
a
gen
lot
calls.
of time.
I need to be doing follow-ups
Yes,
and I need to,
100%.
yeah, for sure. I should do it more though, and I like it. So that's yeah.
So for
But
flips, question like when we do flips, I do it a lot for like marketing purposes. Like if there's
what
a
do you mean
house
by
in a good
that? That's
neighborhood,
cool.
so I'm like, if it's a good neighborhood or I want more business in that neighborhood, I'm like, I'll flip it because then I can put
Oh,
my sign up for 3 months.
perfect.
But just
Okay.
curious, like, have you ever used it like as a marketing tool, or is it more so like, how'd you find your flips, or was it client? Like, how did you navigate that or find the flips and opportunities?
Sure. So when I was in Dallas from like 2003, 2010, I predominantly worked this area called East Dallas, which was kind of an up and coming area. It had a lot of older inventory, and that's where I owned my rental portfolio. There was one other neighborhood that was kind of like that was cute and charming in this other side that I had a couple over there. But mostly I worked this, I didn't even do this intentionally, but I just love the area. And it presented a lot to have like the cuteness factor and being an interior designer.
Yeah.
Like I went and rated like all
Oh
this was
yeah.
before all the TV stuff that ruined everything, right? Like I went to like the boneyards and I rated old like wood corbels and pieces of architectural stuff when you could buy that for like a dime and warehouse that stuff. And so I went to these neighborhoods where you could really make things cute and bring it up to, the level.
And
And
then
so I ended
yeah.
up like farming. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time, but this whole area called East Dallas and did my flips there. I farmed that area because it was where I lived and I liked it. And then I started getting calls. And so pretty much I had my real estate license, honestly, just to find deals and to sell my own. But then like my neighbors started being like, hey, you know this area really well. Can you help me with this house? Or friends, And so I started doing realtor stuff for them. I didn't try to build the business. It was just people who called off my signs that I knew. I was kind
Yeah.
of picky with who I worked with because I was working a lot of hours that's back when I could work 12-hour days, 6 days a week, like I would prefer. And so, yeah. And so the realtor business just naturally was built off of that. Finding the
Yeah, so it was
deals
a
was
market.
right. Yeah. And that's how it should work. It
Yep.
kind of came about naturally. But also back in 2003 to 2008, it was just easier to find deals. There weren't all the HGTV shows that made it like
Oh
so
right.
hip or whatever.
That's true.
We have a couple of we have a couple of big national wholesale groups. One of them's called New Western. There's a couple that work the Dallas market, and they're doing like $10,000 worth of postcard mailers and
Yeah.
all these like marketing nets. We didn't have any of that. It was me and a bunch of old papas at like these REI meetings or RIA meetings, and it was just a close knit kind of community. We knew each other. You sort of knew who to trust and who not to trust. And it was easy, it was easier than part of why I don't do as many now is it's just honestly hard to find them where the numbers were.
It
It's just,
is. They're
yeah.
there, but it is harder to find them. It takes more time and more running numbers. And like you almost have to like. I feel like when we started doing flips, it was pretty like almost every deal worked that we would like. If I had my eye on something, I'd run the numbers.
What year did you start?
We probably started flipping, and I mean, we don't really like flip houses, but if it's an opportunity, like a client needs to get out and they don't want to have a contingency, or there's
Right.
one in our neighborhood. But I'd say we did our first flip in probably 2016, maybe.
Okay. So
Like you
that's
could
good.
find, and I think that it was weird because that was even, I think you have to trust what you attract too, because I don't think a lot of people were saying there are no deals, and we were finding deals left and right, but it was because we were doing the flips and then people were finding out we were doing them. So then people would reach out to us and be like, hey, my so-and-so needs to move and they can't get their offer accepted with a contingency. Would you guys be willing to look at the house?
Gotcha.
Honestly, had a lot of things that were kind of fell into our lap. We weren't out, I remember like crying in the front yard of one of the flips and I'm like, I'm never doing this again. Like it was just one thing after another was going wrong, and contractor was struck when we were paying him hourly. I'm like, I can't freaking do this anymore. But then I'm sure like we closed on it and I got the paycheck and I was like, all right, I could do that again.
I have those moments. I had one
You
that I
do.
bought in Dallas that it had been a crack house. And I did, this was back in 2007. I did $3,800 worth of haul off of crap. They had amassed dental chairs and stuff. But at one point, like, you know how the guys do like 90% of the work and they don't finish?
Yeah.
So it was one of those. They didn't finish. Like bulk trash day was the next day. So I went to just go like lock up the house. And then I ended up having to carry like 15 huge trash bags to the curb. And I had like open toe flip flops on because I wasn't planning on, doing anything. And this bottom of bag broke across my feet, and I don't know what it was filled with, but maggots, wet maggots, like trash dropped onto my feet, and it
Ugh.
stunk like something dead. And I was screaming, and like the water wasn't on at the house. And it was just like, and I just cried to the curb, and I was like, I hate this. And it was just, yeah. So you have a lot of
I have
those
a similar
moments.
story with roaches.
Yeah, just big
Ugh.
nasty maggots, and it was like maggot juice all over my feet. It was yeah.
I can't.
Ugh.
Me and my husband have one of the rentals we owned. It was an Airbnb, and it was really cash flowed well, but we always had mice. Like I'd always and our cleaners would not they would cancel on me last minute. We've never had that on any other property except this one. And so I'd end up having to go over and clean it because we'd have people checking in, but you can smell a dead mouse like the moment you walk in. And I remember the fourth time it happened, I was like, I'm out. I turned it off Airbnb. I put a sign in the yard. My husband was out of town. I'm like, I can't, if I ever have to freaking figure out where a dead mouse is again, I'm like, I can't do this. So I sold that one. Yeah, they were like, oh, they always came in the laundry room, and I couldn't figure out where they were coming in. So luckily, at least, I figured out where I could start to look for them. But it was always like,
you have an ozone machine?
Yeah. Yes.
Those are like anybody's going to flip. I'm like, buy yourself a couple of ozone machines, you know, cat pee, cigarette smoke, just put that sucker running when nobody's there over a 4-day weekend.
Totally. And then I use these Austin air purifiers. They're really good too. Those are freaking phenomenal. So I have a couple of those. They're expensive, and I've actually lost a couple because we forget to pick them up when we sell the house. I'm like, yeah. But those work between the ozone machine and that. I'm like, gosh, I feel like you can almost get any smell out now, which is really awesome. So, well, I was going to ask you one final thing. Recommendations, like what's your favorite book, podcast, resource? And then I'd love you to talk about your podcast so people can head over to your show and listen to yours.
Thanks. Yeah. Gosh, there's so many. You know, if somebody is experiencing health issues or they're even just not feeling their best, go deep with Dr. Mark Hyman. He's so knowledgeable. He even has things for like blood sugar. If people are getting kind of pre-diabetic, like it's basically clean up your stuff, and then also some stuff to go deep if you have issues. So I love anything of his. You know, I love all the biohacking stuff. So I watch Andrew Huberman's podcast. Is a great one for health wellness. I like impact theory. I like what his wife does one too. I love all that stuff. But in terms of the chronic illness space, I recently just interviewed, in fact, her podcast hasn't dropped yet. She has a podcast called The Pajama Interviews. She is somebody who struggles with chronic illness. She's a business owner. She's had a chronic illness for 20 years. So she's really far down the learning curve and knowledgeable. And I think she's out of New Zealand, somewhere in the UK. But her podcast is called The Pajama Interview. She's got about 3 years on there, and she has just her guests are great. And she just finished a section on like business and chronics. So I found her information to be great. My podcast, we're newer, so I think my 5th episode's dropped. It's called Bouncing Back. And there's another podcast called Bouncing Back that's on financials. Mine's Bouncing Back, Professionals Thriving with Chronic Illness. And we're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And then I also have started a Facebook group, a community called Bouncing Back, to just continue the conversations where my guests can come in, because I have a lot of healthcare practitioners on there, and they can share resources. I share tools, and I'm hoping to get, a dialogue going in there for people. So anybody can join.
I love that. Well, so in the podcast notes on this show, we will make sure that we have links to everything. I think you shared them with us, our team, and if not, we'll get them. So we will make sure that everyone has access to those resources. Thank you so much, Melissa. I appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Invested Souls.
We hope you found our insights valuable and feel inspired to elevate your real estate and relationship goals.
If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us.
Follow us on social media for more tips and updates, or visit bradandjamieflanagan.com. And to find out more about our Real Estate Wealth Accelerator, don't hesitate to reach out.
Until next time, keep investing in your future and nurturing your relationships. Thanks for listening to Invested Souls.